Hi, everyone. So good to see you all. Welcome to the Machine Learning Engineer Program information session with FourthBrain. My name is Molly Larkin. I'm the Director of Operations at FourthBrain, and we are so excited to see you all here today and to get started telling you a little bit more about our program. One thing to note is that there is a chat with this YouTube stream, so please put your questions in there and we will do our best to get to as many questions as we can. So first up, we are going to have a bit of a Q&A with some of our students. These are the team members that are here today. I've introduced myself. I'm about to introduce Greg, and then you'll meet James a little at the end of the session. So Greg, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks so much, Molly. I'm really glad to be here today with a couple of our amazing students that have taken our program and really gone out into the world and done some great things. So I think we're going to get started with hearing from them. We've got Sam Sipe with us today, who's kind of taken a circuitous path from sort of a development operations, a DevSecOps sort of background into machine learning engineering. And then we've got Chris Alexiak, who's also made a transition more on the data science side to machine learning engineering. So I'd like to go ahead and kick it off with you, Chris. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey from looking at data science and then finding the FourthBrain program and some of the steps that you've gone through along the way?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Greg. So again, I'm Chris. And basically for me, like I've been very interested in this kind of field for a long time. Found my way into a data science position and have been was working hard to get towards the machine learning side of things, which is kind of what brought me to FourthBrain, especially the data-centric, the dedication of data-centric machine learning, which I felt was really interesting and is hopefully the way that things are going as we progress through the field. So yeah, pretty straightforwardly, got interested in kind of uni and have been personally tinkering and following and doing some upskilling until FourthBrain, where I put the skills to the test in this program. So yeah. Very cool,
Chris. Yeah, I want to bring up Sam now. And Sam, can you tell us a little bit about your journey into the FourthBrain program?
Hi, of course. Thanks, Greg, and welcome everyone. Thanks for coming to chat with us today. So I, like Chris, which I think you'll find is a common theme for people who break out into the machine learning world, also took the long way around. When I graduated college, I had a little stint flying for the Navy as a naval aviator and officer there for about 6 years. And realized pretty quickly I didn't want to be an airline pilot. So when I got out, I reactivated my engineering mind and my engineering degree, started getting really smart on Python, spent a lot of time doing ML adjacent work and, realized where all the fun was and that it wasn't that hard to break out into it. So I applied to FourthBrain, and the MLE and the machine learning engineering cohort of October 21. Chris and I actually were classmates, and he was a huge instrumental help along the way. Big team, big networking group. And then after that, I left my job and I now work as the lead data engineer at a startup.
Very cool, Sam. Yeah, there's a lot of threads there that I'd like to kind of pull on a little bit. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is you mentioned this, you sort of reactivated your engineering mind after you realized that, hey, like, I'm not sure if this thing that I'm doing, this road that I'm headed down, that this is the right one. And you sort of pivoted over. Was that sort of the key turning point for you, pivoting into ML, and how did it come about?
So, Greg, I'm a pilot. I don't believe in roads. So I feel like you can always just change course when you feel like you're ready for it. So, but to use your metaphor, I was feeling like I wasn't doing the work that I wanted to do. And so I worked really hard to up my Python skills, which is really critical, really to any data science role and machine learning role. And I'll be honest, I spent a lot of time asking Chris for help and extra hours after class learning. But it's paid off for me, and I really learned a lot.
Very cool. Very cool. Did you see a similar sort of pivot along your path, Chris, that, there came a time where you sort of had to make a decision, the road turns left or right, and you really chose data science and machine learning?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's, in terms of when you're presented with the wide berth of, different things you could do in this kind of space with software, I think you have to make a choice, right? It's all about specialization, and it's choosing to specialize in something like data science or machine learning versus kind of your traditional software engineering skills or, DevOps roles or what have you. So I do think that there comes a point where you kind of have to say, this is the thing I'm going to do now. And for me, that happened, relatively late into my path, unfortunately. But it's something you have to do, is kind of pick a path and then really go down that path and figure out, what's at the end or near the end of it.
Yeah, when it comes to sort of choosing a path, one of the things that we hear a lot from potential students and from current students is like, do I have to decide? Do I have to pick, like, you mentioned data engineer, Sam. We hear machine learning engineer a lot. We hear now ML ops engineer is an up and coming title. There's DevOps, there's DevSecOps, there's software engineer. Best practices in this sort of like pick a path, Chris. I mean, is there sort of a time that came that you said, like, this is the title? And has that started to evolve at all? I mean, what's the current state with your search and your journey?
Yeah, like 1,000%. I think knowing the title that you're wanting to head towards helps a lot in determining what things you want to focus on learning more or over other things, right? We all have a limited amount of time to learn. And so for me, like, it was kind of that transition from, okay, data science and machine learning, they're a little bit different. I want to focus more on machine learning. And then once you get there and once you feel a little bit more comfortable in that space, then it's choosing, another path, right? A fork in the road, which for me, like, I've been focusing more towards like that NLP side of things even. So it's, you have these choices to make as you go along the path. And I think for me, like, dedicating your resources into becoming a excellent in one path versus like being the generalist is a lot harder when the technology is moving so quickly these days.
Yeah, we've actually got sort of a very relevant question from Sarthak. You mentioned that there's a little bit of a difference between data science and machine learning. Can you talk about how your view of that has evolved, what that looks like today, maybe in the context of data scientist and machine learning engineer as well?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So for me, data science these are all very loose definitions. It's not a super well-defined space right now. And I think as time goes on, it'll become more defined. But for me, data science is a lot about discovery and learning and finding insights and taking kind of a big lump of data and then turning it into something, finding the nuggets in it, finding the value. Whereas machine learning is a lot about, it's the engineering part of the job, right? It's figuring out, so now that we know that there's a nugget here, how can we best build a system to extract that reliably? How can we best engineer a system to make sure that we can get that out of future data? How do we, make sure that it's the closest to the nugget possible? And so for me, it's kind of ambiguous. And I'm sorry about that, but those are how I differentiate the roles in my head, at least.
So yeah, this differentiation, Sam, do you have any sort of particular individual insight into this a little bit nebulous space? You're sort of data engineering as well. Maybe we can pull that thread in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that's cool about this space is that it is nebulous and that you can kind of pick your route or make a role, right? Greg, I think you well know that ML ops was not something anyone was talking about 5 years ago. And now it's a huge field. So, for me, I think the defining difference between, are you doing data science or are you doing machine learning engineering has actually to do with the scale and the infrastructure which you do that on. If you're in a Jupyter notebook, just writing some Python code, manipulating a little bit of data, that's data engineering, data science, maybe data analytics. But if you're taking in massive data sets that you yourself have never actually set your eyes on, and you're scaling it in Kubernetes or in the cloud or in some other MLOps platform, and you're deploying massively complex models or even simple models, and then getting insights from that, and then using those insights. So again, like the key distinction is in machine learning, you're using those insights to drive something, whether it's a business objective or a user interaction. With data science, it's more like trying to ask the right questions, which can very much lead you down the slippery slope of machine learning, which is cool. But they are different in that sense. So hopefully that kind of helps some of our listeners.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I kind of want to double click in on, you mentioned a lot of these infrastructure things. You mentioned a lot, you said Kubernetes and you're talking ML ops. And, I think we have a lot of folks that potentially, they don't necessarily feel very comfortable heading into a role that needs to deal with those sorts of things. So Eugenario asks, is it possible to get into the ML field without a CS degree? So I know, Sam, you're probably coming at this from looking at others, and maybe Chris, you're coming at this, from a little different perspective. But Sam, I'd like to start with you. I mean, what do you think? What have you seen, in terms of people getting into this field without that classical background in computer science?
Yeah, I think I'm a perfect example of it. I was gluing sticks together and putting paper on them and trying to get things to fly in college. I wasn't writing any code. And the code that I did write was terrible because there wasn't something I really knew about yet. Now, I will say I did have the opportunity to learn the engineering lesson that software and then now machine learning is critical to building any hardware product in 2022. I learned quickly where the fight was, and I ran towards it. So yes, you can do it without a proper engineering degree as well. I think engineering is a great way of learning a mindset. So it's helpful, studying English and then trying to go be a software developer or machine learning engineer might be tough, and it might just kind of go to what you're interested in the first place. So, but if you're someone who's studying informatics or something like that that's adjacent to the field and you think critically, then yeah, we need you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I went to college as a mechanical engineer in the first place myself, and really did not like coding for a very, very long time until I started to see it's very necessary, even as a hardware person, to learn the software. Chris, I wonder if you have an opinion on the computer science degree. Are you seeing people get in without it? And what sort of advantage do you have if you do have that background, maybe?
Yeah, I think of course you can get in without it. I think the really critical piece about machine learning is that it's a skill that's necessary to a lot of jobs. But what might even be more helpful to those jobs is domain knowledge. And so if you have a degree in, say, biology or health or these kinds of fields, and you're looking to get into healthcare related ML, that's probably going to be really useful, right? All that domain knowledge helps you kind of guide the laser that is machine learning. That being said, I think that there are some advantages, of course, to having a traditional background, which is that you really your ease to build really extensible, beautiful productional code is a lot more straightforward. Your knowledge of kind of classic data structures, algorithms, and just how to write good, clean, object-oriented code or whatever it is. It's, of course, that's useful. And learning those lessons earlier in your career, make sure that you're building a really good foundation. And so I of course, yeah, the CS degree pathway is very, very robust. It's just definitely not the only way anymore.
And have you met anybody in your travels at FourthBrain that didn't have that background but succeeded anyways?
This guy, I don't have a traditional background along with Sam. I liked physics, so no, it's definitely possible. You just have to work for it, right? Like it's you got to spend the time doing the work, and you got to spend the time learning how to walk the walk, as it were. And if you can do that and then bring some domain knowledge to the field, then I think it's possible. And I know that's the case with a few of our other cohort mates. And so that was just in our cohort, right? So I imagine across all cohorts, there's got to be a lot of non-traditional backgrounds.
And Sam, did you see anybody else running towards the fight, so to speak?
Yeah, I definitely did. So, I think the hardest part about any of this is understanding how to write Python. And anytime, aside from the linear algebra and fundamentally understanding gradient descent and doing all the machine learning stuff, to actually get a machine learning model to work, you need to be able to write Python. And you can do it in other languages now. JavaScript is kind of trying to steal the ML thunder and do stuff over there. But fundamentally, if you're able to sit down and learn Python, if you're able to dedicate, 6 months to a year of your life into a course like Udemy or Data Camp to learn data science level Python, you'll be ready for FourthBrain. And as a testament to that, I was flying planes in May of 2020, and I was in FourthBrain by October of 2021. And I got a job and had life and other stuff in between that. So you can do it.
Yeah. Angie asks exactly to that point, how long does it take to ramp up into Python? And, we're here in 6 to 12 months, take a Udemy, take a data camp. I mean, what was the path like for you, Chris? I mean, what was learning Python like for you, and how long did it take?
I've been coding for like a long time, so maybe it's not as relevant to people, but I just was coding when I was a kid and then kept doing that the whole time. So I just something that I've always been interested in. Now, how long did it take me to transition from, let's call it, hobby programming to a more professional style? I'd have to agree with Sam. It's 6 to 12 months to get yourself to, let's say, 70%, and then a lifetime to get to 100. So I think it's you can do the job at 70%, and that's what's important. And there's always more to learn. They keep releasing new stuff all the time. You know what I mean? But yeah, probably I would say give yourself a year, and I think it's going to be good.
A year. Okay. All right. Somewhere between 6 months and a year, lots of asynchronous resources, but you got to want it, right? Like you've got to run towards the fight. You've got to really run towards the uncomfortability. And so, this from hard skills to soft skills, I mean, what role has sort of the soft skills like communication, like collaboration, like working on your capstone team, for example, or working on teams in the industry since then? Like, what role has this played in your journey as a machine learning engineer? Sam, let's start with you, and maybe even comment on how COVID has impacted this as well.
Yeah, of course. So the capstone project was the fundamental thing that attracted me to FourthBrain. There's other ways to go out and learn about machine learning, but there's no other place that I've seen where you can sit down, have expert advisors from the industry and from Stanford and other places literally helping you debug your code. So, little pitch for what I built, but I built something called Amplify for my capstone. I believe it's still hosted. You can go to amplifygrid.com and check it out. I'll let Chris talk on his because he actually got the best project award for our cohort. But it was fundamentally, for me, that was the best part of FourthBrain. And I think it was the most that I've learned in any time in my life, because you're able to actually go do and build something. I think the second half of that question was how was that impacted by COVID? And I think this is one of the things where, an unintended silver lining of COVID is that the focus on managing your own time and being able to set your own hours and have work flexibility and all those things that some of us have now seen have allowed people like me to go out and, rather than sitting in meetings in an office and having a 1.5 hour commute both ways, I can now spend 3 hours learning Python, or now learning SQL, or now learning machine learning or something like that. So for me, in my personal experience, I would say it's enhanced it. Obviously, for the greater social good, that's a bad thing, but it is a silver lining.
Excellent. Yeah. So, Chris, maybe you can talk a little bit about the role that collaboration has played in your journey. I know you're a huge collaborator out there. Follow Chris on LinkedIn. Everybody, he's doing a great job collaborating across many folks. Maybe talk a little bit about how you've really embraced that and the impact that it's had on your path.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, just to kind of echo and build off of what Sam just said about COVID, like I'm Canadian. It's like a huge part of my identity. So I love being from Canada, but I mean, do you just meet Canadians up here in Canada. And so this idea of going kind of global with this COVID providing us a space to have these resources and to kind of go fully remote has allowed me to meet and collaborate with people that like I never would have had an interaction with before, or would have been at least much less likely to. And so in terms of collaboration, like we all hear this all the time, right? Like the more varied experiences you have, the better ideas you wind up with. And that's super, super true. And so for me, like FourthBrain was a place to get there's so many different experiences coming into this. Like what Sam said, like the idea that you have these Stanford trained, super technical, like whiz-minded people. And then you have like people from other countries, people from other situations, from different economic and social backgrounds. Like it's awesome to collaborate with these kinds of people and just really build your network of like amazing people and friends, right? Like it's awesome. And for me, that was huge. Like collaborating with someone like Sam really helped me, because as much as Sam is a nice guy and he's giving me a lot of credit here, like I don't hold a candle to him when it comes to deployment, right? So having him as a resource to learn that made me a better MLE for sure. And like, so yeah, collaboration makes you better. And like collaborating with former alums for me, working with Jason Brooks with Harkness, like, getting those opportunities, and just, I think number one is like getting yourself out there it's so important, because you never know who you're going to meet. You never know what meeting's going to land you like a job, right? Like, I don't know, it's super, super important to collaborate, and it just makes your ideas and your code and your everything better. So
I'll expound upon that a little bit, because I think it's something that's really unique at FourthBrain that I don't think was intentional when they set off to make this program, but it's kind of become a little tiny network of people who are passionate about learning, machine learning, etc. And it's a really great resource. And Chris and I, we chat weekly now, and it just so happens that we're the two folks to come talk about this. But there's all sorts of other folks that I've networked with, both up and down the cohort ladder too. So folks that are ahead of us and behind us. I just got a text message 20 minutes ago from someone who's interested in FourthBrain, and maybe you're out there listening because I sent you the YouTube link. So it is kind of cool how it's become a network. And then also for me, as someone who's coming from a background in military service, there is kind of this tangential network built up around FourthBrain of veterans trying to get into machine learning, and that's the VDSML, or Veterans in Data Science and Machine Learning. So for those of you out there that kind of came from my background that are trying to break out into this and maybe aren't ready for FourthBrain, that's a great springboard, and I can't say enough good things about that community and how much they've given to me.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's the number one thing that we heard at a deep learning event that we did recently, where we asked a bunch of really successful AI leaders, what's the number one thing that people should do starting out in their journey? Join a community. That's the number one thing that you should do today. And so, like Veterans in Data Science, FourthBrain is a community, and like there's lots of communities out there, and that's the number one thing that I think it always comes across. It gives you that fuel to keep going and work on, to Ruth's question, work on real projects that are really valuable and that really try to go the distance rather than getting stuck in the Jupyter notebook, just playing with data, playing with models, playing with data, playing with models, not really knowing where to go. So, I know you both mentioned sort of your capstone projects. Sam, you pushed it to Chris, but Ruth asks, are we going to do real projects, development and deployment? What would you say to that, Chris?
Yeah, you sure will. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's critical. Sam had this point earlier, I believe as well, but like if you're making models, that's awesome. And it's a lot of fun and you're learning. But I think you need to see it in the wild. Like you got to push it out to somewhere. You've got to deploy it. You've got to see how that looks like. You've got to see using it from like, say, a user's perspective, or maybe a more business related perspective, like that kind of knowledge, which is something that there is a focus on in the MLE program at FourthBrain. Like it's necessary to see what your model does in the wild and to push it out to the world, right? Like it's super cool when it's on your computer, but imagine like anyone could use it, right? So yeah, deployment is a huge part. It's definitely something you're going to do. Definitely something you should be doing. It's the second half of the puzzle, as it were.
Yeah, and it makes for great stories, right? And I think like that's, you mentioned earlier, Sam, hey, like check out this link. I forget what the link was, but we should drop it in the chat here for everybody. And like it speaks to that storytelling from the beginning to end to end, full AI product development life cycle. Chris Fortes asks, how much product development, not management, but development, is there in an MLE role? Do you define the business problem, like questions to ask, or are you sort of told to do something and to try to build an ML model instead? You in a startup, maybe you can answer from that perspective, Sam.
Yeah, wow, I love that question. So fundamentally, a little bit of it depends on your company's culture and what the data science department looks like. But I am a huge proponent of machine learning engineers, or even just software engineers with machine learning experience, or DevOps folks with ML ops experience, all of these good things, being embedded with the core product teams, working with the core product folks, and not just being off in some data silo. My company is very much run like that. Like we are 100% integrated. We're obviously a small team, so it'd be hard to not be integrated, but our data decisions and our product decisions go hand in hand, and we can drive the company from data or from product needs as well. So for the most part, if you're working at a company right now as a data scientist and you're siloed just with your Jupyter notebooks and you're on this call thinking about FourthBrain, you should absolutely do it and use this as a springboard to go work at a different company that doesn't do that. So that's my pitch.
Amazing. Thanks, Sam. Yeah. Chris, do you have any additional comments on this idea of like being told what to do versus sort of, actually scoping it out and really like ironing it out? One quick anecdote, I taught engineers for years, sort of atoms, not bits. And many of them some of them actually wanted to just sort of be told what to do and to let marketing do their thing and to not really worry too much about interfacing with the customer. Is there room for both here? And which side do you prefer to be on?
Yeah, there's 100%. You can find both ends of the extreme, especially right now. Like with the roles being kind of loosely defined, it's a buyer's market, right? So if you want a job where you're told, hey, model this, deploy this, do this, check your Jira tickets, like you can 100%. There's a space for you. If one of the people that I talked to who's been really helpful mentioned to me, like there's two kinds of MLEs, right? There's the mathematician and then there's the engineer, and so there's a space for both kinds of folks, and that extends to like product focused. So yeah, you can definitely do both. For me personally, I like code, I like development, I like tinkering. That's where I live. That's where I'm happiest. So I love having a task and getting it done. So that's the side of the fence that I fall on. But there's a space for all spectrum of MLE.
Yeah, love it. And a tactical question here. Would you recommend this program for somebody who's already kind of busy? I mean, maybe they have a full-time job already. What do you think? Is this doable, Chris? I see you shaking your head. Is it still doable with a full-time job?
Heck yeah, I did it with a full-time job. I think a lot of people did, right? I know one guy who did it with a full-time job and then also a kid, halfway through the cohort. So I mean, if you can make the time, you can make the time. It's not the time investment it's not zero. it's what is said on the tin, right? And if you want to excel, you might have to put in a few extra hours if you have a weakness or you're less strong in a topic, for sure. But it's totally manageable. It's something that you could do while maintaining having a life. Like it's as long as you dedicate, you use your time productively. No worries with the job. And if you can convince your workplace to let you do some of it during work hours as professional development, boy, that would be obviously that would be great for you as well. So
yeah, so I'm kind of intuiting, Sam. I don't know if this is the way to think about it. Like you spend some time working on Python, you get to a minimally sufficient state, you feel like you can do the job, and then you really start to layer in this sort of second piece of the puzzle, as Chris put it, right? This deployment, this actual like taking the model and doing something with it, maybe doing some data engineering on the front end. And that's really where, a program like FourthBrain came in for you. Is that about right?
I think that's fair. One thing I will kind of caveat both with that statement and the one preceding that from Chris is that FourthBrain is exactly the type of program where you get as much out of it as you put into it. So if you throw in 30 hours a week, worth of your time, which I feel like my capstone team and I definitely did towards the end there when we were trying to get everything wrapped up, because we were passionate about it and excited about it, then yeah, you're going to get that much knowledge out of it. But could you feasibly get through FourthBrain, get a good semblance of the knowledge, without doing that? Sure. And if you're a data scientist who's got a rigorous day job, 40 hours a week plus, but you want to do FourthBrain because you want to break out into MLE, but you're also a solid Python developer already, you will probably be able to have the experience that Chris described. But if you're like me and you still have to Google every little Python error that you get because you can't understand, basic class structure, then yes, you will have to work harder. And yes, it will be hard to do it full time. I did do it full time. I worked 40 hours. Plus, though, I did also have kind of an agreement with my work on making time for FourthBrain and shifting my requirements. But it's all kind of on how you work.
Yeah, I love that. That's really resonating with me, Sam, because one of the things that we like to, really remind each student that comes in is it's so important to figure out what you're aiming at exactly. Because if you don't know exactly really what you're trying to get out of this program, you're not going to be able to allocate the right amount of time. You're not going to be able to really direct yourself into the right job title, the right location, the right tool sets, and really just the right aims in general. I mean, was it clear to you exactly what you were aiming at when you joined FourthBrain, Sam?
It was. And actually, it's not what I ended up doing. I ended up hitting that goal, crushing it, and blowing right past it. So my original goal when I took FourthBrain was to, in my past job, I spent a lot of time assessing situations, assessing data, assessing pipelines, and deciding really if machine learning is the right route to go. Like there are some times you'll find that machine learning is not the right route to go, either due to cost or complexity or time to build, all that kind of stuff. So my main objective was to suss out what machine learning was and is it something that we need on these projects, and basically be able to do it when asked, in a simple, case. Check, like literally got that within the first couple weeks. So from there, I kind of dove off like, the next challenge I set was deploying this end-to-end model. And you're going to hear that a lot if you go to FourthBrain, because it's kind of like the ultimate challenge for, it's like the marathon of machine learning. It's like, can you take some data that you've never seen before, that you don't know what the insight's supposed to be, find the insight through exploratory data analysis, produce a model and deploy it and let someone use it either in a web app or an endpoint or something like that. So, I guess that kind of loosely answers your question, but it's challenging.
Yeah. The marathon of machine learning. I like that. Yeah. So the end-to-end nature, I think, it's so key. And I'd love to hear that you got exactly what you were aiming at in no time flat. That's amazing, Sam. Chris, was it really clear to you exactly what you wanted to get out of the program when you came into it? And what did you notice about other folks in your cohort that that really, made the most of their time as well?
Yeah, I had a pretty like nebulous goal going into FourthBrain beyond like the obvious get better at the tasks, which was trying to find where I felt passion in terms of specialization. And I felt that FourthBrain was a great environment for that. It really helped me to figure out by doing all of these processes, hey, which of these am I most passionate about? And I think for others in the program as well, like it seems as though there was a really huge net of goals that people had, and there were some that were more defined and some that were less defined. I think that we had a critical moment in our cohort, which was the midterm, which really helped people kind of fall into, okay, if I came in here with some nebulous goal, what's my goal now? And the goal is I got to be able to overcome that midterm style challenge, right? And I think that it really kicked the whole team into gear, into figuring out like, hey, we're going to get good enough at this so that midterm is not a challenge, right? Like we look back on it and we say like, nah, no problems, easy, right? And I think that the capstone really did let people achieve that goal, at least in talking to people in the cohort. So yeah, I think you can come in with any kind of goal, and then if you don't have a really specific one, you'll find one pretty quick. So.
Very cool. Yeah. Yeah, that's also great to hear, Chris. I want to kind of wrap up this part of our info session with one question for each of you. And Chris, let's start with you. If you kind of consider, you harken back to when, like, I don't really know machine learning that much, but like I'm okay with Python. Like, I think I have some baseline. I'm ready to sort of move into this new territory. Things change really fast in this industry. There's always new buzzwords to track. There's always new tools to be abreast of. There's always different things happening. And so the landscape looks a lot different than it did probably when you were at that point. If you were there today, somebody who's in exactly that same position today, what would your advice be to them as, the one or two things that they should be focusing on, that they should be doing with their time to get where they want to go?
I think for me, it's one thing and one thing only. That's build. You have to build it. Like this is going to sound harsh, but I don't think it's enough to just do the notebook. I think you got to build it. You've got to put it out into the world. You've got to deploy it. That whole process teaches you so much more about the whole tech stack. It teaches you more about Python, right? How to be a better Python developer. Teaches you more about ML for obvious reasons. Teaches you more about ML ops. Gets exposure to a number of technologies, right? You can deploy on AWS, GCP, all these different. You can deploy it yourself, like, right? But you've got to go through like that. Every project you do, even if it's a toy project, just push it out, push it to the world. Make some API so it does something when you load a picture in or whatever. It sends text that says cat or dog, but doing that every time is what I would tell my younger self, like just build it and deploy everything, man, like everything.
Build. All right, Sam, over to you. So somebody's exactly in the same situation that you found yourself in, but it's 2022. What are you doing different? ML ops is on the horizon. Like what's your strategy here?
So I'll be honest with you, and I'll caveat this with tool chasing is never a good thing. So if you're working in a framework, stay in the framework and keep growing it. But as soon as I got out of FourthBrain and kind of had this new FourthBrain to use, I saw an immediate need actually on a project that I was working on for a customer where their ML stack was growing, they were developing, but they didn't have ML ops. And I didn't even know what ML ops was at all a year and a half prior to that. So, or even at the beginning of FourthBrain, it was something I just heard of. I didn't really know how it could help someone. So I was in the MLE cohort and I came out as an evangelist for ML ops. And I think anyone that's doing it properly might feel that way. It's kind of a natural progression in machine learning that, hey, you have this thing, now you have to version control it, scale it, monitor it. So yeah, I would say absolutely, and to comment on the tool chasing thing, I think the hardest part about machine learning right now is that there's so many different libraries and packages and things you can use and platforms and even GPUs now. Like if you're working with TensorFlow and you're working on NVIDIA GPUs to do OpenCV, that's fine. Keep doing it. Like don't go change your entire architecture. And this is kind of what it finally comes down to is be data centric. Like focus on the data and the outcome and not on what the tech stack looks like, because in 5 or 10 years, we're going to look back on this time and be like, wow, we were just chasing, architectures instead of actually focusing on the data. So that would be my final comment. To kind of close that thought, though, since I said I immediately left FourthBrain with these MLOps ideas, I was not looking for a new job at all during FourthBrain. And actually, James, who's great, who I'm sure you're going to meet here in a second, pinged me. He's like, "Hey, what are you looking to do after this?" It's like, "Nothing, man. I'm good. I'm just, trying to learn." But like, as soon as you kind of got the taste of like what this stuff can do and what these tools are for, I got really, really hungry. And that's kind of what forced me to make the jump into the energy startup world to do some cool ML over there. But so if you're out there and you just want to learn, that's fine too.
Amazing. Okay, yeah. So it's something like be data centric, don't chase tools, but focus on end to end and build. All right, thanks so much, guys. Molly, I'm going to pass it back to you to talk a little bit more about the program, and we'll hear a little bit more detail about exactly what you learned, and we'll hear from James as well.
Sorry, I was on mute. I'm going to actually bounce it back to Greg. Just in the interest of time, Greg, I think let's skip directly to the curriculum, because I think that's what a lot of people are having questions about. So let's do curriculum, and then we'll hand it over to James to talk about careers, because we have a lot of questions about that.
Yeah, okay, sure thing.
Yeah,
so I'll take it from here. So, the couple top level things that you want to keep in mind is that we are doing this synchronously live with others. So we're building, we're doing it live with instructors who are, very, very talented. Often they have significant industry expertise that you can draw from. And as we heard, they're going to help you out. And you're also now part of the AI Fund community, the venture studio backed by Andrew Ng, and all of those venture studio companies that are a part of it are essentially in our community as well. So there's lots of great community networking opportunities in addition to the project-based learning and the career support that we heard about. And that we'll double click in on here in a little bit. It is a 16-week program, so there's it's an intensive program. You're looking at, you want to spend about 6 hours a week in class, and you're looking at about 10 hours a week outside of class to really make sure that you get what you need to get. But as we heard, you could spend a lot more. These are all very, very deep rabbit holes that we sort of touch on. And so with that, in the interest of time, I want to kind of like talk to you a little bit about what those rabbit holes might look like here. Of course, we've got some capstone examples. We heard about some of them today, whether it's computer vision, natural language processing, tabular data, or even voice data, some other type of information that you're very, very passionate about. We'd love for you to bring that in. We'll help you scope your project. We'll help you make sure that it's actually going to create value. And we'll really press you to try to get it out into the hands of some potential users of your AI first product. We also have some industry capstones that some of the leading companies in the industry support directly. But we encourage you to unleash your creativity as soon as you get here and to really see what you can build on your own first. So that's sort of the capstone component. That's the guiding light through the program. But as we sort of surround that with each of the component pieces, what that looks like is it looks like there's 4 key pillars. We start at data, and in 2022, it's all about data-centric AI. We end in production environments. In 2022, that means MLOps. So we go from scoping projects, scoping what does my AI product look like, to doing that EDA, doing it not just with big data, but as we put stuff into production, good data often becomes big data in many, many ways. Due to live data streaming coming in, due to some of the monitoring that might happen in production, due to many of the things that happen once you leave the Jupyter Notebook environment. There's also some core ML modeling pieces that are really important to understand these days. Supervised ML, you always need to touch on the classics, like quick update on exactly where the state of the art is there. Deep learning and auto ML are, we have 1 week where we combine both of these. These are obviously very, very deep subjects that you could get really far into if you're into more of a research role, but our curriculum is really geared towards practitioners. So that's why we cover, all of the ML modeling in 3 weeks. It's important to understand the nuances also between supervised, unsupervised, semi-supervised, self-supervised, and beyond. Things proliferate as time goes on. And very importantly, we don't just focus on computer vision, but we are very much keeping up with the times. Natural language processing is the buzzword of the day. And, GPT-2, very easy to leverage and use and fine tune. GPT-3, everybody's talking about it, but try to understand, what is GPT? Does the story of computer vision flow into natural language processing and flow into the transformers? We're seeing, incredible stuff come out from labs like OpenAI today, and like trying to understand, what does that look like and how can we leverage these tools? And then, of course, end to end, how can we build the web app? How can we containerize it? That's Docker. And then how can we serve up that model so that we can actually perform online or batch inference? And so you'll learn the terminologies, you'll learn some of the basic tools, and you'll get a flavor for machine learning in production. And that's at a high level what the curriculum looks like. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to James Van, our Director of Career Services, to tell you a little bit more about how we're going to help you out when you're done with the program.
Hey, Greg, one quick question that I think might be good to address now, just before we move on. Can you just talk very quickly about the level of math that's required for the course? We've talked a lot about the Python, but math backgrounds.
Yeah, I would say that math is most important if you want to really dig in to either big data and distributed computing, or if you want to really dig into the way the supervised machine learning models actually operate, or the deep learning neural net architectures are actually operating. And so, the more that you're into those things, the more that math really matters. But, we did an event recently, deep learning, and the director of machine learning at Databricks, she said that don't forget about the linear algebra. And I think it is important in some domains, but I think it's more important to understand, how matrix multiplication is working, actually writing your code. Are you doing an element by element multiplication? Are you doing it's more important to understand from a coding perspective than it is really to be deep into the underlying mathematics of models, because today it's more important to be able to leverage the models than it is to be able to really derive how they work on a whiteboard. The one caveat is that explainability is a big upcoming thing in the space of leveraging deep neural nets. But again, there's tools for explainability. It's not about you being able to do the underlying math.
Perfect. Thanks, Greg.
You're welcome.
All right, let's hand it over to James.
Thanks, Molly. Good afternoon,
And
everyone.
James, I just want to give you a quick note, just a few of the questions that have come up, you're probably going to answer them. But just so you know, there's been a few questions about job placement, particularly if you're outside the US, and sort of some of our success metrics. So just putting that out there for you, sir.
Very cool. Thank you. My name is James Van. I'm the Director of Career Services. Nice to be here. Nice to meet some of you all. I'm here because, frankly, I'm very passionate about connecting people into kind of their career development, and what's next to them. That's just something that I really enjoy. And so I'm in my happy place. That's why I'm here at FourthBrain. I draw upon years of experience as a tech recruiter. I kind of started up my own journey as a tech recruiter here in San Francisco and Silicon Valley. Somewhere along the line, I transitioned into higher ed, went back to school, got my master's degree in counseling, all that kind of stuff. So I drew upon that experience, like just sort of behind the scenes of like what the hiring process looks like, so that I could go and help people, job seekers, typically when they're, in school and then transitioning back into the workforce. That's essentially, my bread and butter, and that's what I do, right? So how do I help you out? Let's sort of pull the covers back a little bit, right? And I think that you heard from both Chris and Sam about like focus. And I think that that's obviously a good place for me to start, which is like working with you in terms of finding, sometimes it's not obvious when you come in. Sometimes it sort of falls into place, and sometimes it takes a little bit of a discovery and a little bit of a process and a little bit of a conversation. And I'm that person that sort of, or one of those people that can sort of help you sort of find your focus. And then once you get that focus, then the path or paths become a little bit more clear from there. So identifying what your focus is, what your job targets are, that's certainly something that I'll work with each of you on. Then from there, then it's just like obviously creating your marketing materials, right? Your pitches, your value propositions. Okay, company XYZ, here's why you want to hire me. Boom, 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 because I can add value to your organizations in this way. And then obviously, the job search. I'm sure many of you have had this experience where you send out your applications, you send your, resumes out to, companyx.com, whatever their job's at. It falls into this black hole, right? So how can we hack that to sort of backdoor companies to increase your efficiency, but also increase your effectiveness overall? So sort of constructing a strategy and a plan that works. And then as a coach, I help you execute on that strategy. So, sometimes a partner to kind of help along the way is super helpful. So I'm that person that will help you out from there. Next slide. How will I work with you? So in various ways, I guess is really the answer. And I will throw in here that through my experience here at FourthBrain, obviously, a bunch of the students that come into the program still are working full time, and then throw onto that a layer of like, hey, I'm learning something new. So story is you're busy. So I try to accommodate your schedule as much as possible. So there are some people, frankly, that come into the program and I work with them from day one. And there's some people that are just like, James, I hear you. Like, I want to work with you, but right now I want to focus on my study. And I might, defer that a little bit. So what I try to do is I try to accommodate your schedule so that I can sort of focus on at a time when it makes sense for you. That said, I work with you in the following ways. Obviously, I'm available for one-on-one appointments. I work, especially post-grad, I organize job search groups so that you can work with not just yourself, but some of your peers, right? So there's a little bit of support there. I do live workshops. So much like you have live workshops with the rest of your curriculum, I also have live workshops so that we sort of take you through that career learning journey, as I might put it. And then I also have a bunch of content that I make available to you so that you can do some of your own self-paced asynchronous learning as well. In addition to that, I would also say, like, to sum up my role, my responsibilities are these three things. Number one, make sure that you are job search ready, right? That's my pledge to each of you. So you come in and you say, James, I'm going to be searching for a job, after graduation, boom. My pledge to you is that I will take you from where you're at currently and make sure that we are maximizing, your job search readiness post-program. Number two is super important, and I think that you've heard, which is that this program is very hands-on applied, and you'll learn some new skills and you'll learn some new superpowers. And what's also helpful is how can you, as a student of machine learning, learn how your skills apply to the rest of the landscape outside of the classroom. So part of my responsibility is to bring industry people into the classroom so that you can learn a little bit more about like what industry people are doing. So, director, managers, people that are currently, working on some of the same things that you might potentially be working on after graduation. Like, hey, what are some of the challenges? What are some of the problems that they're working on? And like, what are some of the potential roadblocks that you can sort of, count on? What are some of the trends? What are some of the things that would just be like good to know as you start to piece together the landscape outside of FourthBrain? I think that that's a critical part of the learning process. And then last but not least, make direct connections to companies, right? Whether it's a hiring event that we put on, or I connect you in individually to companies that are hiring, that's also part of my job responsibility. So those are the three things that I do for everyone in the that's seeking a job after graduation.
Great. Thanks so much, James. And then a couple other things. Could you speak to how many people get jobs after they graduate that are seeking? And also, how does this apply to people outside the US?
Sure. So the industry standard is to take a snapshot of what employment looks like at 6 months, right? So if you've looked at other boot camps, that's sort of also MBA programs do something similar, right? So 6 months, and so we've had 4 cohorts that have passed that 6 month mark. And that snapshot of those first 4 is at 86%. And that's 86% of our job seekers. It's actually 85.5, but I round up. So that sort of sums up like what, and these are all people that go into industry. So they're actually gaining full-time jobs in either data science or ML. And the second question I think was, how do I work with people that are outside of the US? I do work with people outside of the US. I actually formerly worked at an international school several years back. And so I have experience in connecting people and working with people that are outside of the US. So obviously depending on where you're coming from, conventions might be a little bit different, but also working on connections, meaningful connections that'll be helpful. For the most part, the students that I've worked with here at FourthBrain up until now tend to be like somewhere in Europe and also in Latin America. So I tend to have stronger networks and a stronger grasp of those two sort of general geographic areas, if that makes sense.
Great. Yeah, that's really helpful. Thanks so much, James. If any of you watching want to hear more from James, he held his own full hour-long info session a few months ago, which you can find on our YouTube channel. We are just about at the hour. I want to say a big thank you to Chris and Sam. I know that they have to jump before I do a few more items. We'll run a little bit over the hour, but that's okay. So I just want to say a big thank you to Chris and Sam for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Molly. Thank you, guys. And I didn't say it during the time before. Sorry, just taking up a little bit of time here. James is the bomb. Listen to this guy. Let him help you. He knows what's up. I can't understate how valuable a resource that man is. So
Thanks,
as
Chris.
always, it's an honor and a privilege to be a part of this community. I think it's well worth your time if you're interested in joining us. We're happy to have you.
Thanks so much, Sam and Chris. I'm going to talk a little bit longer about the application process, what your next steps are. So if you're still watching, stick around for just a few more minutes. Great. If all of this sounds great, if you want to be like Sam and Chris, how do you join? I will tell you. So the admissions process, it's a pretty basic admissions process. There's an online application, takes about 10 minutes, just tells us a little bit more about you. And then there's a technical challenge in Python. This is not meant to keep you out. It is meant to make sure that you're ready to go with your Python skills. So if you take a look at it and you're like, not ready yet, that's fine. We'll move your application to the next cohort, give you some time to practice. So we are not expecting 100%. We have many students who come in who, do really well on one challenge, struggle with another. it's just one piece of the puzzle. So we're also looking at your background and your interests and your goals and making sure the whole. So you'll get that email right away after you apply, and you can take a look at it. Once you do that, I'll send you all the information about how to enroll, and you can ask me any questions along the way via email, or you can book a time to talk with me. The most important thing that will predict your success in this program is a willingness to engage, commit yourself, put yourself out there. Push yourself outside your comfort zone, be willing to put in the work. That doesn't necessarily mean hours, it just means committing when you're in class. Engage, participate, all of that. Our next class begins on June 18th. We recommend that you apply by the 1st. This just helps us make sure that we get, all the enrollment pieces settled. You have time to work on that application challenge if necessary, and have time to get all your enrollment pieces in order before that class starts on June 18th. I want to talk a little bit more about your payment options. So if you are based in the US, you have 3 options. You can pay up front. You can pay in 4 monthly installments, or we have a new option called the contingent payment plan. Again, this is only if you're in the US. You sign up for a payment plan in which you do not start paying until after the program ends, contingent on you making a minimum salary of $55,000 a year. So if you're currently unemployed, if you're still a student, you don't have that money to put up front, you can apply for this contingent payment plan. Once you get a job and you're making a minimum salary, then you start making your payments. If you are outside of the US, you can pay up front, or you can pay in these monthly installments, but that contingent payment plan, unfortunately, is not available to people outside of the US. If you have any further questions about payment options, you can always write us or apply, and we can give you more information at that time. I'm going to go back to a few questions that had come up earlier and just make sure that we get to all of them. Greg or James, I might ask you to jump in on a few of them as well. Let me just double check. So we have one question on people who are in technical fields besides computer science and data science. We did address it a little bit with Sam and Chris, but I just wanted to add, we do have people who are outside computer science, software, data science come to the program and be quite successful. We have a lot of engineers, in more traditional sciences or traditional engineering. We have product managers. We have people from outside of tech. We have people coming from academia. Lots of people can be successful in this course. So I just wanted to reiterate that. So that if you are not a computer scientist, if you are not a data scientist, you can still be a great addition to this course. And James or Greg, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I'd like to add a little bit to that, Molly. I think it's,
yes.
I think the most important thing is that you're excited about whatever domain it is that you're already sort of bought into. And what we're noticing is that the more excited you are about a domain, about a data set, about a problem, the better your end projects turn out. So, really the way to think about this is you're learning tool sets and processes and systems that can be applied to any domain and any data and model. But if you have a particular proclivity, interest, and you're very, very excited about your domain, bring that to this set of tools, this set of processes and systems, and that will actually put you out ahead of the people that are a little focused on playing the next big tool game and just learning skills. It really helps from an end-to-end perspective. As long as you have that minimum Python, you can pick up these tools and really make an impact in your domain.
I might add, I agree with everything that Greg said. And I think from an employer perspective, employers are really interested in seeing how you as an individual, what do you bring to the table? So everyone's got, something valuable that they bring to the table and what they add to the mix, right? And so the higher level question I might add is, if I'm in your shoes, is what do I bring that I can sort of, take to companies, because they'll want to know, and they'll, it works.
Great. Okay, great. I'm going to leave one little nugget before closing. A couple people have asked about time zones, when classes, how do people in Europe attend? If you're not already signed up for our email list, and you can get on that email list by signing up at our website, by downloading our syllabus, by signing up for this info session. Stay tuned. You might hear a little something in the next few days about people who are based in Europe. So make sure that you're getting our emails and opening them. So just make sure that you're opening our emails. Our courses right now, the one on June 18th is geared towards people in a US time zone, but we have had people from Europe attend. Late at night for them, but they can be very successful. So we'd welcome people from all across the world. One thought I just want to leave you with, and Greg and James and Chris, if you're still here, I would love to hear a little bit more, or just hear your final thoughts. We hope that we've shown you today that FourthBrain is more than just a course. It's really, a community. It's a chance for you to learn from each other and really build your next career, as opposed to just gaining some knowledge and skills. So that's what we tried to build FourthBrain as, and we really welcome people who are looking for that, who are looking for more than just something to do online, but really learn with this group and community around you. Anybody else want to add any final thoughts before we close out here?
Molly, I think it's so true. We recently revamped the curriculum. Our entire way that we encourage our instructors to interact with you, that we encourage everyone down to the people grading your assignments and giving you feedback on your capstone projects, is all about putting you and your transformation at the center. And so if you come in and you know what you're aiming at, we are here to help you get there, help you team up with people that are on similar paths, taking similar journeys from similar starting points. And so, we really, as our community grows, it's more and more likely that you'll be able to find exactly the type of folks that you want to journey with. And so we really can't wait to see you and to get to know you and to help you along in your journey.
And I'll just talk because I love it, but just to build off of what Greg said, it's so important to engage. I think if you come here with the idea that it's like a traditional school environment where you just sit in the lesson, you do your homework, and then you stop thinking about it, you're gonna take a lot less out of this. Make sure you engage in the community, engage on Slack, engage with your fellow cohort members, like really get talking to people and building that network at the start, so that when it comes time for projects, the capstone and beyond, you have that network already starting. So I just really engage with the program, and I think you'll have a lot of fun and find success.
Great. Well, thank you all for coming. This recording will be available on YouTube pretty shortly, and we'll send out the link in a day or so with any follow-ups. Submit your application. Would love to hear from you. Would love to hear any other questions or thoughts you might have at our email address here. Thank you all so much for attending, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you.